Hello everyone. We're here to discuss about the theories and factors affecting motivation. So they're basically the motivation theories and we shall take four: attribution theory, self-efficacy, choice theory, and the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the first one is on the attribution theory. What is attribution? It is the causal explanation of an event or behavior. So when something happens to us, we try to answer the question, what was the reason? What brought this about? Okay, so that is what you mean by attribution. Kumbaga sa Tagalog, anong dahilan? Sinong may dala nun? Sinong may kasalanan? Something like that. Okay, so that is attribution. What factors brought about something. So the attribution theory is based on the theory given in the 1970s by Bernard Wiener. Okay, so it deals with how individuals interpret events, as I've mentioned, how thinking impact our behaviors, and basically that we attribute our successes or failures or other events to several factors. Why did we succeed? Why did we fail? So that is a large part of the attribution theory. Okay, so to understand it, there are three categories of attribution. First, we look at the location or the locus. Are we giving attribution to something internal or something external? And then stability. Is it something that we cannot change? Or is it something so that's stable? Or is it something unstable, meaning it can easily be changed? Or we also look into controllability. Is it something within us to change, to control, or is it something we can't do anything about because it's not within our control? Okay, so what when we say attribution that is internal, success or failure is attributed by our own abilities or efforts. Okay, for example, a student traces his good grades to his ability and to his hard work. So, why did he succeed? It's because of something within him. External is when we attribute success or failure by outside factors, like the student claims that his good grade is due to effective teaching of his teacher or to adequate library facilities. So why did he succeed? It's because of something external. Stability, as I've mentioned, is something that cannot be changed. It's there. The student attributes his poor performance on level of intelligence inherited from parents. And unstable, the student attributes his poor performance to excessive watching of TV. So it's something that can easily be changed. Huh? Next is controllable versus uncontrollable. Controllable is the student admits that his poor academic performance is due to his poor study habits. So it's is it something that the person can do something about? So therefore it is controllable. And uncontrollable, the student claims his poor academic performance is due to his teacher's ineffective teaching strategy. So aside from being external, it is also something that the student feels he cannot do something about because it is uh, on the part of the teacher. Okay, so that is how we attribute things, no? So generally, people tend to attribute their successes to internal causes and largely their failures to external causes. So in motivating our students, it's important to for them to realize that they should look inwardly rather than simply looking at external causes. So to look at it, it's how the three categories interact. It's like attribution would be largely internal for success. If it is stable, then you say I'm smart. or if it's failure, I'm stupid. So it's something that is already there. If the student feels it's something that cannot be changed. No, I'm really smart, something like that. And then it is unstable we if it is internal and it's internal and it is unstable, then that can focus into what effort, like I tried hard, that's why I succeeded. No, why is it unstable? Because a person in another task may not give his best or may not try hard, so it's not something stable. Okay. Or if it's failure, the person can say, I really didn't try this time. So it's something that is not um permanent. It's something that the person can do something about. Okay, now external that is stable can be about task difficulty. Like, well, that subject is really easy. Okay, so it's something there already. Or it can also be for failure, it could be it was too hard. Or if it is unstable and it is external, it is alluded or it is related to luck, no? So because luck is just it comes, so it's not stable. It can be here or it cannot be here. Okay, so success is I was lucky. Yeah, it was a lucky day. Or failure, I had bad luck. Okay, so there are different ways that we attribute our success and failure. And of course, the thing is, we develop in our students that sense of internal attribution because it is what they can do something about. Okay, then the next theory is the self efficacy theory by Albert Bandura. Okay. One has the necessary capabilities to perform a task, fulfill role expectations, or meet challenging situations successfully. People are likely to engage in activities to the extent that they perceive themselves to be competent at those activities. So self efficacy is very important. Once we believe that we can succeed and that we can do something well, then we will be more motivated. Okay? So how can we bring this about in our students? Make sure students master the basic skills, help them make noticeable progress on difficult tasks, no? If they cannot see that they're making progress, we point out to them, oh, you see, you're doing well. Because before it took you longer to finish it, now you're doing it faster, and I can see that you are doing it better. So that will increase the students' belief that they indeed can succeed in what they are doing. And communicate confidence in students' abilities both in words and in actions. Sometimes you just pat their back, we just smile at them, and they feel that, oh, I'm doing this very well. And of course, expose them to successful peers. Remember, Bandura believed in social learning, imitation, modeling. So one way to increase self-efficacy is for them to see, oh, my my friends are succeeding in it, so I can also succeed. Okay? So there are also indicators of self-regulation. If a person sets standards for oneself, and that as a student, you can monitor and evaluate your own behavior against the standards and impose consequences on yourself. Na? So you say, okay, when I finish this, I'm going to, my daughter does this, I will eat the chocolate, something like that. Na? So, of course, that's very behaviorist, but let's impose consequences on oneself. When we are able to succeed, we reward ourselves. And if we have failure, then we say, you will work harder on this so that you'll be able to get it. Okay? So, a person with good self regulation and self efficacy would, of course, be more intrinsically motivated because he believes he can do it and I should work on this. So, people who have this kind of attitude, of course, are very well motivated. Okay, so it's important to set your goal, to plan, to focus your attention. Remember, this is Bandura, no? Attention is important. Application of learning, self monitoring, and self evaluation. So that's how we continually develop self efficacy because we constantly monitor and evaluate how we can even do things better. Okay, so there are different things that affect efficacy, like performance outcomes. If we succeed, then the more we are motivated, the more we believe that we can do this, we can do the task. So that is what continually makes us increase our self efficacy. That's why it's good to plan something well and and work on it so that when we succeed, then we are better motivated and we increase our belief in ourselves. Another, of course, is vicarious experience. When we see other people succeed at something, then we tell ourselves, I can succeed too, and I can also accomplish that. So it increases our self efficacy. Verbal persuasion, as we said, as teachers, we should continually encourage our students because it helps them and it boosts their confidence to really keep trying and keep succeeding and believing in themselves. And Bandura also believed that there is physiological feedback. We experience a certain high, a certain sensation that yes, I can do this. No? Or sometimes we become so anxious, so nervous that the more we feel that we can't do it. That's why it's important to really have a check on how we feel. No, we always check, okay, okay. And then we manage that fear, that anxiety, because even if we can actually succeed, sometimes a person will not succeed because of what he feels inside. So we also keep that on check and we also manage stress and anxiety so that we can have higher self efficacy and succeed in what we do. Okay? So students are most likely to model the behavior they believe are relevant to their situation, and students develop greater efficacy when they see others like them performing the task successfully. Okay? So, if you have high self efficacy, you'll be able to accept challenging tasks, expend high effort, and the person becomes persistent because they believe that they're going to succeed. No? So, this is summarizing it. And as I've mentioned, you're able to control your stress, control your environment because you're able to plan ahead what should be there and how you would. Answer to challenges in the environment, and that we discard unproductive strategies. Whatever is not working, we do away with it, like negative thoughts. Now we discard that because it's not going to help us succeed. Okay? So look at this too. Which expresses your self efficacy? How much do you believe in yourself? Because according to Bandura, it is how you look at yourself that will largely determine whether you will succeed at a task. Okay, so look closely. Are you an A or a B? Do you see a weak kitten or cat, or do you see a lion when you look at the mirror? It's very important, especially when you take the board exam, when you're doing your lesson demonstration, you're applying for a job. It's very important that you have that belief in yourself. And Bandura called that self efficacy. Okay. The next theory is a choice theory. This is a biological theory that suggests that we are born with specific needs that we are genetically instructed to satisfy. So this was given by Dr. William Glaser, and according to him, there is a need for survival, no? And after the need for survival, you have the need for connecting, the need for power of competence, freedom, and fun. Okay, this is another way of looking at it. Love and belonging, power, fun, survival, and freedom. So you see the things under each of these basic needs. And he gives importance really to belonging and connecting. And according to him, there are controlling habits and there are connecting habits. And for one to really be motivated, let us focus on the connecting habits. Let's listen rather than blame. Let's support rather than criticize. Encourage rather than complain. Negotiate rather than nag. Respect, not rewarding control. Accept, not to be threatening, and to be trusting rather than punishing. No? So, will what I say or do bring us closer together? So, cho- uh, we believe, no, this choice theory adhere to creating connections, because according to the theory, it's all about relationships. So when we have good relationships in our lives, like with our parents, with our teachers, with our friends, with the people we work with in groups, like when there are group activities, group projects, no? So relationships will motivate us and will bring us closer to our goals. Even in life, no, the most successful life is the one with beautiful relationships. Okay? So that is what William Glaser points to us. Okay? So we realize that in the choice theory, everything that we do, we can actually choose. We are not prisoners of our environment. So that is what the choice theory points out, that the only behavior over which we really have control is our own. So when we are motivated to give our best, we know that we ourselves would be responsible for achieving the goal. Okay? So as humans, we are responsible for our own behaviors, not society, not heredity, and not our past history. We do not blame the past. We do not blame the people around us, because humans can change and pursue a more satisfying life. And we can act intentionally in order to modify our environment and to make it conform more closely to the image of our needs, not to meet our needs. So, choice theory points us to our responsibility, to our self responsibility. So, if we have the responsibility and we connect it with Bandura's theory and we believe we can, and that we have self efficacy, then that will bring us to the highest level of motivation. So, that is the choice theory. I choose to live by choice, not by chance. To make changes, not excuses. To be useful, not used. To be motivated, not manipulated. To excel, not to compete. Self esteem, not self pity. I choose to listen to my inner voice, not not the random opinions of others. So this is a very um, powerful quotation exemplifying the choice theory. Okay, the last is about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I know you're familiar with this. In your other subjects, you might have discussed this. So, at the bottom are physiological needs. We need to satisfy the needs of our body before we can move on to the higher levels of needs that will motivate us. Okay, the next one will be the safety needs, no, security, shelter over our head, um, safety, health, and of our health and of our property. And then next would be love and belongingness, friendship and family and sexual intimacy. And then the next is esteem, no, confidence, achievement, and of course the topmost is self-actualization. That is already giving ourselves to others and achieving what we want to achieve in life, and not just to be popular, but it is all about uh, being a complete person. It focuses on morality, on creativity, on spontaneity. We're already free to respond in ways that are most meaningful to us. We help in solving the problems, not just for ourselves, for our families, but on a wider scale, like in the community or even the world. And there is already acceptance of people and acceptance of facts. So that's the highest form of development, no? So before we can reach this, we need to satisfy these basic physiological needs and safety needs, no? It's very hard to really focus on achieving having good grades if we are hungry or we don't even feel that we are safe. So it goes up like that, and this serve to motivate us, no? Now, in motivating us, our needs can be classified as the D needs and the B needs. So the D needs are the ones that are called deficiency needs, because if you don't have them yet, like physiological and safety needs, then we continue to be motivated by it, no? But once we have satisfied it, we're no longer motivated. Example, if you're hungry, you will do everything to look for food and eat, no? But if you are already full, even if you are showed lechon or leche flan, whatever yummy food there is, you will no longer be motivated by food because the deficiency has been met. The same thing with safety needs. Okay, so they are D needs. They are basic needs that once satisfied, you are no longer motivated by them. But the last three are called B needs because they are being needs. No, they are needs that give meaning to yourself as a human being. You know how you exist and how you matter in the world. No, so these are what we call B needs. We continuously long to belong and to be loved. No? We will always be motivated by feeling respected, no? And having accomplishment. And of course, self-actualization is something that is not easy to achieve. This is about achieving one's full potential, and we are constantly motivated by this. Now, they say that there is a revision to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that we should include Wi-Fi there. Uh, of course, I am just joking. Okay, so when we reach actualization, I have mentioned this already. There is acceptance and realism. There is centering on problems, how we can help, how we contribute to having a better community, better society. There's spontaneity. We do not always work uh, with certain plans. Sometimes we can just do something and give us such fulfillment to do. We're also spontaneous in the things that we say, no? So everything is not flat planned and really so thought of. Sometimes it's good to be just spontaneous about things. And then a self-actualized person can be alone, no? There's autonomy and solitude. They also appreciate the solitude. So we say they are alone but not lonely. Okay, they can be alone with themselves because they're comfortable with themselves, and there's always a freshness of appreciation. They look at simple things, even a blade of grass or a flower, and they see such meaning and such beauty even in these simple things. And of course, there are peak experiences. Peak experiences are really the usually they have a spiritual aspect, or it's spiritual in nature. They have these such high um, levels of experience, like being one with nature or even being one with God. These are the characteristics of self-actualized people. Very few people have reached this. Probably uh, an example would be Mother Teresa, who was already uh, done, not really motivated by the simple needs in life, but she dedicated her life to the service of others, and you see how profound her words are. No? So as we get motivated to achieve higher and higher things, the goal really is to reach, according to Maslow, to reach self actualization. Okay, so these are the different theories of motivation, and I hope that knowing them will help us apply in ourselves how to motivate ourselves, and of course how to be a very motivating teacher in the future.